What up, though? History. History.com. What role did airplanes play in the Tulsa race massacre? Few historians dispute that planes flew low over the city's prosperous black district during the 1921 attack. Pro- um, Properly American. There's no such thing as black. Few historians dispute that planes flew low over the city's prosperous black district during the 1921 attack. The city's prosperous American, the only Americans there ever were, is, and will be, district during the 1921 attack. What's less clear, whether bullets were fired or incendiaries were dropped. This was last updated May 28th, 2025. It was published May 13th, 2021. Not sure why History.com updated this article. I mean, why not just put out the facts to begin with? I mean, it could be argued that, hey, they learned they got some new information. And this is by Pharrell Evans. Pharrell Evans or Pharrell Evans. Pharrell Evans. Just after Memorial Day that year, a white mob destroyed 35 city blocks of the Greenwood district, a community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, known as the Black Wall Street, falsely called black because there's no such thing as a black. No such thing as a black human. It was properly known as the American Wall Street. The American Indian Wall Street, prompted by an allegation that a black man had sexually assaulted a white woman. The Tulsa massacre resulted in between 100 and 300 deaths, the decimation of more than 1,200 homes, and the burning of churches, schools, businesses, a hospital, and library, according to a 2001 Tulsa Race Riot Commission report, the most comprehensive review of the massacre. So, 2001 Tulsa Race Riot Commission report. It would do you well to go check that report out. The Tulsa Race Riot Commission report in 2001. I haven't checked it out. I'm pretty sure it's a good read. The most comprehensive review of the massacre. For its part, the Red Cross reported that the attack left more than 10,000 Tulsa residents homeless. Calculated in today's dollars, property damage would be assessed in the tens of millions of dollars. Okay, so you notice the first paragraph. The first paragraph has a bunch of interesting things. That's why this channel is all about peeling back the layers, learning, teaching. We're doing it all. So look, let's tackle some of these numbers. Okay. First of all, Black Wall Street, no such thing as a black. We understand that. So it's an American Wall Street, American Indian Wall Street. The people of this soil, all they was doing was taking care of themselves. That's it. They was providing for themselves. They was shopping with other people who look like them. You understand? They wasn't pushing to be segregated. They was their own community. Segregation, all that stuff, that's political stuff. Because look, if you live where you live and somebody else live where they live, Guess what? Eventually, maybe y'all might speak to each other. Then maybe y'all will holler at each other throughout the week. Maybe you'll shop at their store. Maybe they'll come shop at your store. Maybe they'll trade with you and you trade with them. Maybe, if you want to. You don't have to be forced. Prompted by an allegation that a black man, no such thing as a black. Again, you might think, hey, who cares? We know what they mean. Yeah, but it's false. That's what happened when you keep letting somebody call you something that you not. We can't keep letting people call people things that they not. A black man is no such thing as a black. And it says a white woman, no such thing as a white human. The background right here is white. It says resulted in between, it says, how many? It says a white mob, okay? A white mob. We don't know how many white people was in that, so-called white people was a part of that mob that destroyed 35 city blocks of Greenwood district. So a white mob went and destroyed 35 blocks. Where you live at? Where you live at? Go outside, think about, or what, you know where you live, wherever city you from, wherever you from, think about 35 blocks and think about a white mob coming to destroy 35 blocks. And mind you, these families were more cohesive. These were cohesive families. They didn't destroy, it didn't say they destroyed 35 city blocks and the inhabitants of which were all children. No, these adults, 35 blocks, a mob, all these white people happen to get together at the same time on the same page and destroy 35 city blocks in one whop. And it says resulted in between 100 and 300 deaths, the decimation of more than 1,200 homes, and the burning of churches, schools, businesses, a hospital, a library, according to a 2001 Tulsa Race Riot Commission's report. So a mob destroyed 35 blocks. A mob of white people got together. They was on the same page, on one accord, and they decimated 1,200 homes. 1,200 homes in 35 blocks. Churches, schools, businesses. That's a lot. That's a lot. It don't really sound possible when you think about it. It's the first paragraph. Do it sound possible? 35 blocks, churches, schools, businesses, hospitals, libraries, plus not just the businesses. It says churches, schools, businesses, a hospital and library, plus 1,200 homes. So how many people was in this mob? 50,000? No. They didn't give us a number. We don't have a number. Maybe the 2001 Tulsa Race Riot Commission report has an actual number, because that would be important. A mob of so-called white people destroyed. Listen, this is all in a particular time period. This didn't happen over years. This didn't happen over years. $1,200 homes. A white mob now. A white mob. We don't know how. A white mob. I don't know how many people was in that mob. Now, first, The idea of them getting together and being on one accord all at the same time to carry out something like that, like when they was talking about doing it, yeah, we finna get together. We finna go over into Greenwood. What? We finna go over to where? We finna go over there where them niggas at and do what? So everybody got on one accord. Everybody agreed. Let's go do this. Let's go do this. 35 city blocks, 1,200 homes. Churches, plural. Schools, plural. Businesses, plural. A hospital and a library. So the so-called white mob, what kind of artillery did they have? I mean, a hospital? And then the icing on the cake. Calculated in today's dollars, property damage will be assessed in the tens of millions of dollars. Who cares? Do you think money, do you think dollars mean anything to these people? Do you think that's what do you think that's what made these people initiate taking care of themselves? Do you think dollars was the motivating factor? Or do you think being self-sufficient was the motivating factor? Do you think doing what you supposed to do was the motivating factor? Calculated into today's dollars, who cares? It's always, everything has to put a dollar value on it. Why does everything have to have a dollar value attached to it? Dollars can't buy everything. Dollars can't buy all the talent. Dollars can't buy life. When martial law was declared on June 1st to end the fighting, journalists, residents, and others began gathering accounts of what exactly happened over those 18 hours. Okay, now we got a time period, 18 hours. Come on, man. Come on, man. I'm going to say it one more time. Here we go. Let's do this right here. One more time. 18 hours, a white mob, 35 blocks, 1,200 homes, churches, schools, businesses, a hospital, and a library. 18 hours. In the Greenwood district, historians are still assessing the viability of witness reports of low-flying airplanes, some raining bullets or incendiaries, that became an enduring theme in the reconstruction of the events. But even though only about 15 planes were known to have been stored at local airfields in 1921, it remains a mystery who owned the ones used in the Tulsa attack and how exactly were they mobilized. It remains a mystery. If the ones that was stored at local airfields weren't the ones involved, then it's a mystery who owned the other ones, right? There is no question that there were planes flying over Greenwood during the massacre. Historian Scott Ellsworth, a professor of African American studies at the University of Michigan who has studied the Tulsa massacre in depth, told History.com in an interview. Scott Ellsworth, a professor of African American studies at the University of Michigan, there is no such thing as an African American, so I have no idea what African American studies is or what it means. There's no such thing as an African American. There is evidence of this from both the African American and white communities. Okay, so African Americans as opposed to white. Okay, so it's African American and whites. So earlier it was blacks and whites. So I guess African American would be synonymous with blacks. Neither exist. But Greenwood was destroyed on the ground by a white mob. It was not destroyed from the air, says Ellsworth, author of 2 books on the Tulsa Massacre, Death in the Promised Land, the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921, and the groundbreaking An American City and its Search for Justice. Ellsworth said, the professor of African American Studies or the professor of Invisible Studies or Black Studies, says, but Greenwood was destroyed on the ground by a white mob. Now, a white mob who managed to remain a mob until the damage was done in those 18 hours, destroying, wreaking havoc on the many things that it is said that they destroyed. They managed to remain a mob. How many men were in that mob? It must have been at least like Sparta or something like that. 300, had to be, right? Mary E. Jones Parrish was a teacher and journalist in the Greenwood district who gathered photos and firsthand accounts of the massacre, including her own. Mary E. Jones Parrish was a teacher and journalist in Greenwood district who gathered photos and firsthand accounts of the massacre, including her own. In her Events of the Tulsa Disaster, self-published in 1922 and republished in 2021, she recalls seeing fast approaching airplanes, and that more than a dozen airplanes went up and began to drop turpentine balls upon the Negro residences or the American residences, American Indian residences, began to drop turpentine balls upon the Negro residences. According to the 2001 Commission report, black newspapers were full of stories, American newspapers were full of stories of turpentine or nitroglycerin bombs being dropped and men shooting from planes. Buck Colbert Franklin, a Tulsa attorney and the father of historian John Hope Franklin, also remembered turpentine balls falling from the sky. I could see planes circling in mid-air, Franklin wrote in a 10-page manuscript on yellow legal pad that was discovered in 2015. They grew in number and hummed, darted and dipped low. I could hear something like hail falling upon the top of my office building. The sidewalks were literally covered with burning turpentine balls. I knew all too well where they came from, and I knew all too well why every burning building first caught from the top. At the time, the government didn't mandate registration of airplanes, so it's difficult to know their ownership, but the commission report suggests that most were likely owned by Curtis Southwest, the oil companies and individuals. Well, we don't know who owned them. Okay. And just because they say at the time the government didn't mandate registration of airplanes, so it's difficult to know their ownership. Just because an administrative process, they're saying an administrative process is not taking place, we supposed to believe one thing over another? Who cares about the administrative process? Who cares about the administration of it all? It says were likely owned by Curtis Southwest, the oil companies, and individuals. Black Tulsa residents, African American massacre survivors. See this? Don't take this lightly. Don't take this lightly. This is keeping you a theoretical human. You're a theoretical life form. Black Tulsa residents. Well, there's no such thing as black. So Tulsa residents. Why can't they just be Tulsa residents? Why do they have to be black? Ask yourself that. Why you gotta be black and not just a Tulsa resident? African American massacre survivors. Why you can't just be somebody who survived that act of war? Ellsworth himself is less convinced of the reports of Molotov cocktails and turpentine balls. Ellsworth says, I believe without a doubt that Greenwood was bombed from the air, but more likely with sticks of dynamite. So now he says it was burned down. First, he said it was burned down on the ground by the mob. Now he says he believes without a doubt that Greenwood was bombed from the air, but more than likely with sticks of dynamite. Yeah, that's a point of contention with him. He wants to clear it up that it wasn't turpentine and nitroglycerin balls, it was sticks of dynamite. In the Tulsa Riot Commission report, researchers concluded, they concluded, okay, so they wrapped it up. Nothing else to see here. In the Tulsa Riot Commission report, researchers concluded that some form of an aerial attack on the Greenwood district did take place, but they fell short of giving it the same prominence as did some of the eyewitnesses who lived through the massacre. Why did this take place? I'm asking you, why did this take place? Who cares about oil? Who cares about the minerals? Who cares about the resources? Why did this take place? What type of human beings, for lack of a better term, would do something like this? What is it about these people? Huh? You ever ask yourself that? What is it? What is it about these people? Why would someone do this? Why is it always a continuing course of terror, mayhem? Why? And since these people landed on your shores, it's been a course of destruction. It is within reason that there was some shooting from the planes, and even it is within reason that there was some shooting from planes and even the dropping of incendiaries, but the evidence would seem to indicate that it was of a minor nature and had no real effect in the riot, wrote Richard S. Warner of the Tulsa Historical Society in the report. So Richard S. Warner of the Tulsa Historical Society, we know we can't rely on him for truth. He's biased. You know how we know that he's biased? I didn't say what complexion he was. I don't care. You know how we know that he's biased? He said, it was of a minor nature and had no real effect in the riot. That incendiaries were being dropped from the planes and some shooting. but it was of a minor nature. How can any of that be minor? And why would you put nature on the end of that? Ain't nothing natural about that. He cites Beryl Ford, an authority on Tulsa photographic history, who analyzed the building damage visible in pictures. Photos show debris scattered only inside the building's shells. Had explosives been employed, Ford points out the debris would have been strewn outside as well. While it is certain that airplanes were used by the police for reconnaissance and photographers, there probably were some whites who fired guns from planes or dropped bottles of gasoline or something of that sort, the report concluded. However, they were probably few in number. It said some whites. What whites? Whites in uniforms? White pilots? It says, and there were some whites who fired guns from planes or dropped bottles of gasoline or something of that sort. It says some whites. What whites? Whites in uniforms? White pilots? Question. About the author, Farrell Evans. This is the author. Tulsa World, Tulsa, Oklahoma newspaper, Wednesday, June 1st, 1921. Tulsa World, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Wednesday, June 1st, 1921. Whites advancing into Little Africa. Negro death list is about 15. So from the headline of this Tulsa World newspaper in 1921, the propaganda continues. It says whites advancing into Little Africa. Was the reporter with the whites that were advancing? What do you call them reporters that is on the scene? Why it's supposed to be going down? And they got the vest on and a jacket that say press. Like when they start popping, the bullets just gon' like miss them because they say it say press. How did the whites advancing suggests that it's happening as the reporter speaks? Whites advancing into Little Africa, Negro death list. So Africa, Little Africa, I guess, is the home of these so-called Negroes. But we know that there is no such thing as a Negro. Negro, black, no such thing as a black human. Little Africa, what are they calling this Little Africa for? This is America, right? I mean, it's America. Why is that so confusing? Because if we call it Little Africa, think about it. You get it. Some people will have gotten a sense of pride from some being called Little Africa, and it includes them in it. When in fact, it's America. There was an unconfirmed report at 6 o'clock that 3 more white men had been killed in the latest clash with the blacks, but it could not be verified with the Americans, the American Indians, the people who those, quote, white men, end quote, saw when they first landed on these shores. With the coming of dawn this morning, following a night of race rioting and death, hundreds of armed white men in motor cars formed a circle of steel about Little Africa. Oh, so that Little Africa is actually a part of town. It's actually known as Little Africa to the outsiders of that community. And it says hundreds, so we got a number. Hundreds of armed white men in motor cars formed a circle of steel about Little Africa. Now, again, this white mob continued to be cohesive. This is impressive. This large group of men remained for the 18 hours. They remained a mob. Do you believe that? Who was this mob? Were they organized? What kind of organization? Formed a circle of steel about Little Africa, and a continuous rattle of rifle and revolver fire could be heard. Well, they're well armed, from what I'm hearing. 60 or 70 automobiles filled, 60 or 70 automobiles filled with armed men were in the line drawn about the Black Belt, and there were many reports to the effect that they planned to range through the Negro settlement and clean it out. At 5:30, the death list was estimated as high as 15. These are like these people, people who are reporting. I mean, they on the spot. Though no whites were known to be killed, save two unidentified men listed in the Third World, reports to police headquarters from members of the white bands who had been at the front between the line of armed whites and Little Africa said they had counted the bodies of more than a dozen Negroes stretched in the streets. While the bands of armed white men in motor cars were surrounding the Negro district, 6 airplanes were circling over the section. Okay, so we have airplanes coordinating with the white mob. Who is this mob? And who are the pilots and people on those airplanes connected to the mob? Who are these people? Who are these organized people with all this ammunition? Scattered along the Frisco tracks and in streets immediately south were between 500 and 1,000 more armed white men. Talk of driving into Little Africa could be heard on all sides. Who was hearing this? These talks of driving into Little Africa. Who's telling the story? Who's hearing these things? At 5:45, the white forces were pushing into Little Africa, falsely called Little Africa. We talking Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma right now. We talking America, okay? The place where these so-called 500 and 1,000 armed white men came to because it was paradise to them. This is where they came. It was paradise to them. It was Eden to them. They've said it, not me. You're coming to paradise. You're coming to Eden. But you have an issue with the inhabitants of Eden? How does that work? At 5:45, the white forces, see, it's doesn't appear as what it seems on the surface. At 5:45, I mean, as far as what's happening, it's not deep. No, it's some disgusting, miserable people wanting to infringe on the lives of blissful, natural Americans. Why? Jealousy, envy, hate, envy. At 5:45, the white forces were pushing into Little Africa. From the south, bands of white riflemen being reported at Elgin and Archer. They were reported to be shooting into houses and at all Negroes, at all American Indians in sight. There was no report of the extent of casualties. The Negroes, or the American Indians, were not returning the fire very spiritedly. What is this person who writing the article? They riding with them? They riding? They on the passenger side? They in the passenger seat. They're in the passenger seat with a pen and pad writing down everything as it happens. The Negroes were not returned. And if I wish they tell us who relaying this information to them. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have. They was this person on live? The Negroes, the American Indians, were not returning the fire very spiritedly. It was reported, but American Indian snipers were shooting from the housetops and windows. Shortly after 2 o'clock this morning, the row of framed buildings on the east side of Boston Avenue north of the Frisco tracks was fired. But because there was no wind, the flames burned themselves out and did not spread to the Cincinnati Avenue block, which sheltered several hundred Negroes, properly Americans. At 3 o'clock, the fire had gained sufficient headway to destroy all the buildings except the residents on the north end of the block. At 3 o'clock, the fire had gained sufficient headway. I'm pretty sure it was somebody helped it. When this building was burned, 6 Americans who had been firing from the house at the Whites were driven from the cover, and 5 of the 6 who ran from the house were killed. White men who took up their station at Archer in Boston before 3 o'clock succeeded in pushing their line almost to Cincinnati Avenue in the face of fire from the Negroes. The Americans, however, made no dashes from their places of hiding, and except for the firing of a few shots at intervals, did not attempt to dislodge whites in the Negro section of the city. Members of the crowd of 500 whites around the Frisco depot about 5 o'clock this morning engaged in a spirited battle with several Negroes perched on housetops. However, the aim of the blacks was bad, and no whites were injured, but 3 Negroes were killed within a short space of time. Are you seeing what's happening here? I got a show. It got 4 or 5 parts to it. It's called Propaganda on this channel. You should check it out, because this is propaganda. This is simmered to a fine stew right here. Mwah. Onions, bell peppers, turkey bone broth. Simmered to a fine stew. This is propaganda at its finest. The so-called white has great aim and don't die. But the nigger has bad aim and do die. Yes. One of the blacks was perched on a 2-story brick building on Archer. He raised up to fire, but one of the whites with an army rifle beat him to it, and the blacks toppled, apparently dead now. He has an army. He raised up to fire, but one of the whites with an army rifle, that army rifle, he can just have an army rifle. You know, he could have just got it, bought it from somebody who was selling choppers, and got him an army rifle. Or he could be ex-military who was mad that his U.S. wasn't taking care of him. He been fighting for him. He put his body on the line for him, but they wasn't taking care of him. Or he could be active duty in civilian clothes. But hey, we don't know how they were dressed. We just know that they was white, right? With an army rifle, beat him to it, and the black toppled. The American toppled, apparently dead. The other two blacks were hiding on Archer and were dropped by the white sharpshooters. Sharpshooters. See? It's all coming together. Sharpshooters. Who trained them? What, they was just regular schmegular degular pink people? Regular settlers? Regular pilgrims? Nah, this is 1921. You don't just call a person a sharpshooter. 3 other black bodies were lying near the depot at daylight this morning. 2 bodies had been removed. I think this name it's kind of, the words are faded. I think it says Dale Brady, proprietor of, Dale Brady, or Dave Brady, proprietor of the Brady Hotel, who was a member of white men on guard duty along North Main Street all night, said he counted the bodies of 5 Negroes, or properly 5 Americans. The Negro was dragged behind an automobile with a rope about his neck through the business district. This is what he say. I don't know if it actually happened, but this is what he's saying happened. And I mean, it fits in well with the propaganda, because if you notice with the propaganda, it places the quote white man in a superior position. All the way through the 18 hours, all the way through all the fighting. And, we get to this point, and now the quote Negro being dragged behind an automobile with the rope around his neck. Gruesome stuff. Gore. Horror movie stuff. Think about this. Think about what hasn't been said. Now, as far as the white mob go, I don't know about the white mob, but the planes. Think about bombs being dropped. Think about the children. Think about these great people, some of which are your ancestors. Think about these great people. Think about some of these kind people. And, all these people was doing was living life to the fullest. Think of the horror of getting your house bombed in the middle of the night, and then going outside, and then the next house bombed. A bunch of stuff on fire. Could there have been also places where none of this was taking place? Maybe. Again, they said 500 to 1,000 in terms of the mob. Then, of course, this mob also, they said 35 blocks, 1,200 residences, schools, churches, hospitals, businesses. This mob had a lot of work to do. But they had help. Remember, the army rifle. Remember sharpshooters, airplanes? Reports that 3 Frisco switchmen and a fireman, members of a switching crew, had been shot to death by Negroes, something they refused to haul the blacks out of town, could not be verified. A report from the Oklahoma hospital at 3:30 said 3 wounded white men had been brought there, but that they were seriously injured. The names were not secured. Of course they weren't. At 5:45, a Negro house at Elgin and Archer was reported burning. A Negro house was reported burning at 5:45. Okay. Tulsa World, Tulsa, Oklahoma newspaper, Wednesday, June 1st, 1921. Tulsa World newspaper, again, Tulsa, Oklahoma newspaper, Wednesday, June 1st, 1921. This article reads, Arrest of young Negro on statutory charge cause battle between the races. No, well, if what we read is true, we can't quite call it a battle, right? It's almost, I think the most appropriate thing to call it would be an invasion. An invasion, right? Okay, this is going to be very difficult right here. The race rioting that broke out here late Tuesday night grew out of the arrest Tuesday afternoon of Dick Rowland, a Negro bootblack, or properly an American Indian bootblack. I guess he was a shoe shine guy. He shined shoes, on a charge of assaulting a white elevator girl in the Drexel building on Monday. There was a movement afoot. It was reported among white people to go to the county courthouse Tuesday night and lynch the boot black. This report spread over Little Africa, and early in the evening, crowds of Negroes began forming. So this report says that homie was locked up, and some white people, they was going to the courthouse to lynch him, to take justice into their own hands. And they say this report spread over the American Indian community that is in town, and early in the evening, crowds of Negroes or crowds of Americans began forming. Rowland was taken from the I guess jail. He was taken from this place to the county jail Tuesday afternoon, and his preliminary trial set for June 7th in municipal court. Okay. Says Rowland was arrested on South Greenwood Avenue early Tuesday morning by officers Henry Carmichael and H.C. Back. He was identified by the girl after his capture. The boy did not deny the attack and said he stepped on her foot, but did not does it say scratch or attack? It says scratch, but did not scratch her in any way. He basically saying he didn't assault her. He said he stepped on her foot, but did not scratch her in any way. The girl alleged that the Negro, or the American, entered the elevator and without any provocation attacked her. She screamed for help, and a clerk in the Renberg store ran to her assistance. Upon his approach, the Negro, the American, fled and had been in hiding until captured by the police officers yesterday morning. And it's very interesting to me that when you call someone a Negro, it's almost like you calling them something other than a human. Like a varmint or something, like a little varmint. You know what I mean? Upon his approach, the little varmint fled, The little Negro fled like our people always on the run. Our people always looking to do something, like we're never just living life, never satisfied with ourselves. Like pests. We're made to look like pests in our own homeland, on our own soil. Unwanted on our own soil by people who it doesn't matter what they want. They don't really matter. But they want to matter. And the thing is they want to matter to you. So they keep calling you a Negro because they want to son you. You're supposed to be made to feel like you are a varmint, you are a rodent. The girl is an orphan and is attending a local business college and running an elevator on off hours. So it says the girl who the brother supposedly attacked, which he said he didn't attack her. He said he stepped on her foot. He said he stepped on her foot by mistake, stepped on her shoe. And supposedly she screamed. And it says the girl is an orphan and is attending a local business college. Look, they give a background on the girl. Local business college and running an elevator on off hours. The girl is an orphan. She happened to be an orphan. I'm not saying I don't believe she's an orphan, but I mean, oh my God, it's like everybody gets the benefit of the doubt except the boot black. And let's see. Let's go back up for a second. It says Dick Rowland, a Negro boot black, on a charge of assaulting a white elevator girl in the Drexel building. The Drexel building. This is pocketsites.com. Pocketsites.com. We're not doing deep research into this. We just use this article or whatever because they're talking about the Drexel Building, 319 South Main, 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Events Educator Tour. The Drexel Building, 319 South Main, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74103, United States. The Drexel Building, the scene of Shorty, homie, Dick Rowland, or whatever, supposedly stepped on a girl's foot. She started screaming or whatever. This is what they say. the orphan girl. It says located at 319 South Main, the Drexel building once housed the local clothers Renberg's. Renberg's is the department store that we spoke of. The Drexel building was 4 stories tall. Renberg's department store occupied the first 2 floors, with offices and small businesses upstairs. The building was probably quiet that morning. It was Memorial Day. It was Memorial Day. Ain't that something? Memorial Day? Hold on, man. It gets more and more intriguing. It was Memorial Day that morning. What's the significance of that? Y'all remember? You remember the girl screamed and a clerk from Renberg's, the department store in the Drexel building, came to her assistance. A clerk in a nearby store thought there had been an assault. Others believed that there had been a lover's quarrel between Sarah Page, the white 17-year-old elevator operator, and Dick Rowland, a black 19-year-old who worked in the shoe shine parlor 1 block away. So, her name was Sarah Page. It said she was 17. But the title of that article mentioned the word statutory. Okay. And it said that the building was probably quiet that morning. It was Memorial Day, and most downtown stores, including Renberg's, were closed. So it was a clerk there. It says most downtown stores, including Renberg's, were closed, but a clerk ran to her assistance. At a closed business, rain dampened the holiday activities, including a parade. We may never really know what actually happened. The elevator of the Drexel building on Monday morning, May 30th, 1921, a clerk in a nearby store thought in a nearby store? Where is this store? Where? It was Memorial Day, and most downtown stores, including Renberg's, were closed. A clerk in a nearby store thought there had been an assault. Others believed that there had been a lover's quarrel between Sarah Page, the white 17-year-old elevator operator, and Dick Rowland, a black 19-year-old and an American 19-year-old who worked in a shoe shine parlor 1 block away. So he worked 1 block away, and he found himself in the elevator with Sarah Page, right? Huh? I'm not saying what happened. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I'm reading what they gathered. He a shoe shine. He shines shoes. She work in the elevator. So they didn't cross paths probably. And when they say Negro, when they say black, when they talk about Dick Rowland, they try to talk about him like he wasn't fresh. How you know he wasn't fresh? How you know he wasn't Dougie? Just because what? He a boot black? He ain't clean? What, she couldn't like him? He couldn't like her? I mean, he was a shoe shine dude. They worked in retail. He was a shoe shine. He shined shoes. She was an elevator operator. So they may have crossed paths. He in the elevator with her, right? But the most likely explanation is that when Roland entered the elevator that day, he tripped and accidentally stepped on Paige's foot. And when she screamed, he fled. Hill K., the 1921 Race Massacre, a photographic history, page 262. It says, but the most likely explanation is that when Roland entered the elevator that day, he tripped and accidentally stepped on Paige's foot. And when she screamed, he fled. That is so stupid. An adult came up with that explanation of events, that when he entered the elevator, he tripped. 1921 elevators. Come on, man. That's even crazy, right? That's even crazy, man. So, if the white mob going to our ancestors, some of y'all ancestors, you understand? I haven't, personally, I haven't traced any of my people to Oklahoma, but, our people came from other places to Oklahoma as well. But I haven't, in tracing, trying to follow the trail, the footsteps, follow my family's, the places they went. I haven't, traced any to Tulsa, Oklahoma, but some of y'all ancestors is these people. Now I know these people I guess they was some Muskogees too. So I'm pretty sure some came from Bama, and a lot of my people from Bama. But think about that, man. Elevators. So, if, the Drexel building, Renbergs, they got elevators. Our people was having things, the white mob with their army rifles and they sharpshooters coming to our people community because they jealous, because they people been here for, they people been here for a couple 100 years, 100 years, and they still thirsty, begging for a popsicle. Pasty because it's so hot outside, so hot and humid outside. Clammy and pasty and whatnot. Hot, bothered, fully clothed, 3-piece, 7-piece suit on. Hate the woods by now. Hate them woods, man. But think about that. Elevators, 1921. Illy. So, Sarah Page, the white 17-year-old, she in the elevator. Dick Rowland come in the elevator. This person says that he tripped. Why would he trip? What, he ain't know how to walk? He shines shoes for a living. You think he don't know a little bit something about walking? He tripped and she screamed and he ran. Man, what? Who do that? Think about today. Think about if I'm talking to the nuggers right now. Listen, homie, listen. If you got on the elevator and a quote white girl on the elevator or whatever, and you trip, bump into her because for some reason you tripping over your feet, you gonna say my fault. You ain't, what you gonna run? She gonna scream and you gonna run. You gonna say my fault and y'all gonna holler and might exchange numbers or something. Come on, man. This is stupid. This is fairy tale stuff. It's not hard to tell. I'm not saying this because I've read what's to come. I'm saying this because it doesn't make sense. Somebody getting on an elevator and tripping. tripping so much that they bump into somebody? It's only them two on the elevator? Come on, man. Tripping? Almost nothing is known of Sarah Page, originally described as a 17-year-old orphan working her way through business college. It later developed that she may have been as young as 15 and had come to Tulsa from Kansas City while waiting for a divorce to be finalized. Some, including Dame Roland, some, including Dame Roland, have fostered the notion that Page and Roland were romantically involved. That sounds more realistic. People who knew Roland said the elevator did not stop level with the third floor threshold, causing him to trip as he entered the car and fall against Page. Police later said that whatever happened, it was almost certainly not intentional in any case. Page's cry caught the attention of a Renberg's employee who apparently summoned police. Roland fled, but Page and the clerk, if not actually naming the man, she said attacked her, supplied enough of a description that authorities had no difficulty locating him. It says, Page's cry or scream because homie tripped and fell into her and she screamed. Her cry caught the attention of a Renberg's employee. The previous page said Renberg's was closed, as was most of the other businesses, because it was Memorial Day. This is what they say. This is a comment. I thought it would be more. It says 2 comments. I just thought I'd, go over the comments. Charles Marsala. It says, why did Roland not use the bathroom at the shoeshine parlor? An unfortunate set of circumstances. The elevator makes a sudden stop. There is a physical contact. Happens on Memorial Day, holiday, when few are in the building. All 4 events have to happen to cause the event. Yeah, but what this commenter, Charles Marsala, is overlooking is that it says there is a physical contact that happens on Memorial Day holiday when few are in the building. No, it was closed. Renberg's was closed, but it says an employee of Renberg heard her cry. Which is it? Was it closed or was an employee? It was people there working. This person says, why did Roland not use the bathroom at the shoeshine parlor? I didn't hear anything of a bathroom, but maybe they said something about Roland having to go to the bathroom a block away or something like that. He had to go to the bathroom a block away. But from what I'm getting from all this is that was his, he was messing with her. Period, point blank. He was messing with her. And I'm not sure why this story is the story that is used as the catalyst to the invasion that happened in those brothers and sisters community. Why is this story being used as what caused all of it or started all of it? Is this story even real? Pardon me for not digging deep enough into this to really learn or figure out if any of this stuff is real. If the brother is a real human, if the female is a real person or a real human, if any of this stuff even actually happened, who is the witness that saw him run if the place was closed? Who's saying that they saw him run? Is it her? Where is the interview of her? When does she speak? Where is it documented that she speaks? That her words are on paper? Where is this stuff? I don't know. I didn't look deep enough into it for that. See, we're going over readily available stuff, whether it's from the 1600s or yesterday. Or we riding shotgun while some shit happening. And then the next commenter says, his name is BJ. He says, are you blaming the victim? Sign of the times. Are you victim blaming? Keep the blame on Roland, who supposedly, I guess what I just heard the first commenter say is that Roland coming to use the bathroom. And in the previous article, it say the girl, they later find out that it's some chit chatter that she was 15. And she ran away from Kansas or somewhere where she was living, because she just got a divorce. They said a divorce to make it pretty, to tie a nice little bow on it, but maybe she was running because she didn't want to get married in the first place. And then she run to Tulsa, what they falsely call Little Africa. She might have knew it as Eden. And who she meet? She met a boot black. And they didn't tell you much about the boot black Roland, but she met a boot black. She met a nigga who was supposedly a shining shoes. Probably was clean, come from a good family, smart. Shining shoes to make him a little paper. But mostly his contribution to what his community had given him and the respect that he had for the people's shoes that he was shining. She saw him. She liked him. He liked her. Maybe they mess with each other. I mean, the Washington District of Columbia newspaper, Saturday, June 25th, 1921. We still in 1921. We ain't went nowhere. We still in 1921. The Washington District of Columbia newspapers, June 25th, 1921. Roland, not a native of Tulsa. And we're going to learn a little bit about Roland, apparently. The boot black. Roland, about whom the crime of the riot at Tulsa centered. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, why did it center around this event? Because those events needed an event. They needed a romantic event to happen. You know how they always saying the brother was lynched because he did something to a white girl. Now, don't get me wrong. Lynching, when people hear the word lynch, I don't know what pops in people's heads, but, people, you was punished for different crimes in a different way. You wasn't always punished for crimes in the way you punish for them today. The electric chair and the gas chamber and all that. No, man. Sometimes, people got together Sometimes it might have been your family going to lynch somebody if they did something, that was despicable. I mean, listen, listen. It's a bunch of websites you can go on right now and see niggas lynching each other people. So don't act like that. When you think of lynching, you think all crazy, but it's just people who, you know, a person paying a price the way they want them to pay the price. And they always say that the all reason they lynching somebody, they always say that, yeah, the nigga had messed with the white girl. It seems like that's not only a romantic, a romantic, neat way to put to document what happened, but it seems to also fit into this historical narrative. And as we can see in 1921, it continues. Rowland, about whom the crime of the riot at Tulsa centered, is not a native of Tulsa, but came to this city from Arkansas. He has stayed with his grandfather, who runs a rooming house, and although he has not borne a bad reputation himself, it is known that he has associated with a rough gang. Oh, wait a minute. The narrative gets, the plot thickens. Are we in 1921 or 2025 or 1990 or 1995? Where we at with it? So, man, don't let us find out that Rowland was part of a mob. That's what they say. He has associated with a rough gang, and the girl liked him. That's not implausible. White girl, nigga in a gang. For some time, it is reported he has neither worked nor gone to school, but he was a boot black. How you gonna say he didn't work? No one knows what his purpose was in the Drexel building at the time of the alleged assault. Oh, I know what his purpose was. And the elevator. He entered the elevator according to his story. According to his story, is it his story or history or his story? Which whose story is it? Told, a trial. We got to get those transcripts from that court case. Yeah, we need to get those transcripts from that court case. He entered the elevator. Rowland entered the elevator according to his story told at the trial. The car made a swift motion upward when the power was turned on, and he lost his balance. One of his feet striking the girl, or rather the woman, Miss Sarah Page. She slapped the 17-year-old boy, and he resented it. The altercation attracted a crowd, and the boy fled. Attracted a crowd in a building that was closed because it was Memorial Day, so most of the buildings in the area were closed. The altercation, wait. He entered the elevator, according to his story, told at the trial. The elevator car made a swift motion upward when the power was turned on, and he lost his balance once one of his feet striking the girl. He lost his balance, one of his feet striking the girl. This is what they say he said, or rather the woman, Miss Sarah Page. They put a Mrs. Sarah Page because it appears that she's married from the Mrs. She slapped the 17-year-old boy. Remember, they said she could have possibly been a 15-year-old who was running from a divorce. And remember, they said she was an orphan at one point, they said. Now they're describing her as The woman, Miss Sarah Page, she slapped the 17-year-old boy and he resented it. The altercation attracted a crowd and the boy fled. Mind you, think about this. He entered the elevator. According to his story told at the trial, the car made a swift motion upward. So the car is in motion. When the power was turned on and he lost his balance, one of his feet striking the girl, or rather the woman, Miss Page, she slapped the 17-year-old boy. He resented it. The altercation attracted a crowd and the boy fled. Now, they didn't say anything about the elevator door opening. And the elevator car was going up, not down to the ground level. It was going up. They didn't say anything about the doors opening. So how did they know it was an altercation if the doors are not open? Okay, if the doors did open, the joint is closed. The spot is closed. So who there? What crowd? Why is there a crowd in a building or a business that's closed? The altercation attracted a crowd and the boy fled. Where did he flee to? The stairs? Did he go down the stairs? Because it say he went up. The elevator went up. So did the elevator actually stop on another floor or in between floors? And when he fled, did he go down the stairs? Later, he was caught in the white residential district and arrested by Patrolman Pack, a race police officer. And you will learn, like I learned, that a race police officer, it means a nigger police officer, or probably an American Indian police officer. They call us the race. They call us race. Okay? That's what interested me most, I guess, in this article, is that we were being referred to as race. Just race. You see? Patrolman Pack. See? That's a nigger police officer, an American police officer. It said a race police officer. The arrest was made on a charge of petty larceny. It is claimed that the white woman identified the boy after his arrest as the one who had been insolent to her the day before in the elevator. I just missed something. She slapped the 17-year-old boy. Just want to make that clear that he was 17, and it is said that Sarah was 17, but then it said that Sarah was 15. Now it's calling Sarah a woman without giving her an age. It is claimed that the white woman identified the boy after his arrest as the one who had been insolent to her the day before in the elevator. It's making her seem like she was just in the elevator, riding the elevator. I'm not getting elevator operator. Like, naturally, the larceny charge was hushed up and a big feature made of Negro. Naturally, the larceny charge was hushed up and a big feature made of Negro nabbed for assaulting white woman as the story was published in a Tulsa afternoon paper. I'm just thinking about the fact that this right here, this event was supposedly the catalyst for all the horrible, gory, disgusting, despicable acts, the invasion, the attack, the act of war on the Americans in the Greenwood district in Tulsa. This is the catalyst, and I'm still trying to figure out why, or not necessarily why, because I understand why this would be made a catalyst, but I guess I'm trying to figure out how it was brought together, how it was made to be, how these circumstances were put together. Like, who were these people? Did these people really exist? Did Roland really exist? Did this woman really exist? Or is this just propaganda? Do they just exist as black words on white paper? Let's shake it. As the story was published in a Tulsa afternoon paper. From then on, yellow journalism did its dirty work. Yellow journalism did its dirty work. Why was it able to function so effectively? Conditions in Oklahoma have been comparable to those in Georgia. Men have accumulated property. All through the state, there are wealthy families, but such wealth indicates nothing in the matter of bad social and economical conditions. Such success as men have had in the state have been almost inevitable. To say the least, it has been natural. Oklahoma is one of the great oil producing states. Men of the race, you hear that? Men of the race, and they always put a capital R on race because they're talking about a group of people who actually exist, the Americans. Men of the race of enterprise and industry have gone there to build up their fortunes. Do you see how they do this? Think about this. Conditions in Oklahoma have been comparable to those in Georgia. Men have accumulated property. They say men. They don't say the Americans, the American Indians. They don't want to say your people have accumulated property. They don't want to say it. All through the state, there are wealthy families. What families? It ain't white families. And it ain't black family, it's American families. But they don't want to get specific with that. Don't you find that interesting? It says Oklahoma is one of the great oil producing states. Men of the race, meaning you, of enterprise and industry, or not you, but maybe women, men and women in general, men of the race, and they women or the women and men of the race of enterprise and industry have gone there to build up their fortunes. They have been a pioneering virile class. Men of the race of enterprise and industry have gone there to build up their fortunes. They have been a pioneering virile class. Hardships have meant little to them, and they have prospered with the finding of an oil field occasionally and the ever-present opportunity to buy cheap land. The independent farmers were the first to become successful. Too many of the men who have gone there have intermarried with the Indians. These Indians have large holdings, and this wealth has passed into the hands of members of the race as time has gone on. Oklahomans have had exceptional opportunities to acquire wealth which the white could not deprive them of. And these pioneers have had the industry to make the most of the chances they have found. Too many of the men, of the race have gone there, have intermarried with the Indians. And we know by Indians, they mean also the race. These Indians have large holdings, and this wealth has passed into the hands of members of the race as time has gone on. Oklahomans, who are also the race, have had exceptional opportunities to acquire wealth which the white could not deprive them of. And these pioneers have had the industry to make the most of the chances they have found. Nevertheless, peonage has flourished. The mob has enjoyed as much play in this state as in darkest Texas or in the jungles of Georgia. The jungles of Georgia. Jungles of, that sound good, man. Jungles of Georgia. Men have been impressed for debt by wealthy white farmers, and the sparsity of population in the state has made discovery almost impossible. Now and then a fugitive has escaped and given his story to the world, but it takes a Williams case to arouse people. The scattered tales from Oklahoma have not struck the public heart. They have been hidden. They have been shadowed by Sarah Rector's wealth. Sarah Rector? I thought her name was Paige. Wait a minute. See, they making a case for whether or not she was a real human. They making a case for whether or not she was actually a real human. They have been shadowed by Sarah Rector's wealth. They have been hidden behind a film of kerosene emotion. 3 days before the riot, 3 men were chased from Okomoki and came to Chicago. Peons have fled to New York, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has told about them. In August of last year, a white man was lynched in Tulsa. The prosperity of businessmen of the race, see that? The race in Tulsa had been a cause of envy. And the low-class whites during the winter had done everything in their power to keep laborers of the race unemployed and drive them from the town. Letters had been sent to prominent men of the race demanding that they stop extending the bounds of the district within which they were segregated. A rumor has been extant for some time to the effect that it was the desire of white industry or of private citizens to appropriate the lands which the race had gained possession of. Since the area had become a segregated district to them, the value had increased, and white speculators saw a chance for immense profits if they could only drive the inhabitants out. Now, who are the inhabitants? The race. Or properly, the American Indians. One large foundry had been put up in the district. At the time of the riot, there was only one large white property holder in the district. And by white, we have no idea what this person, who this person was, where they came from. See? That's what those terms do. That's what the term black and the term white do. It gives you nothing. You know nothing. And you like it. The voluntary segregation of the people in the city made the riot easy. It's not voluntary segregation. It's people living life. It's people living life. You don't make an attempt every day to go out and desegregate yourself from people. You live life. You don't got time for that. How many of y'all got time to be going out and desegregating from people? Huh? Letting people know, hey, you welcome over here anytime you want to come. Matter of fact, move over here. You can live over here. The voluntary segregation of the people in the city made the riot easy. Oklahoma had a segregation law, but it was unnecessary. The people originally got together, bought the land they owned when it was cheap, and stayed there. When the fight came, the whites knew where they were. When the fight came, the whites knew where they were. Nothing was handier. The innocent could suffer alone. The plunderers sallied forth into the segregated region, spread destruction, and made their way back to their homes in peace. See that? The plunderers, they were stealing too. I mean, think about it. Think about it. These is settlers and pilgrims. Uh, I call them old peoples. These old peoples thirsty, begging for a popsicle. They don't got nothing. Okay? They struggling. Stop struggling. Things is not easy. Things is not easy. You think it's easy for all of these people. It's not easy. It's just not. It ain't easy for you. It ain't easy for me. It ain't easy for these people today. Why would you think it's easy for them at that particular time? But see, they didn't think that, hey, it's not easy. Let me do what I got to do. Let me go see if one of the brothers over there give me a job, man. Man, let me see if one of these brothers hiring over here, man. Did they do that? No, man. 3 o'clock in the morning. They mobbing up 3 o'clock in the morning, coming to try to steal some stuff. See, they told you about stuff that was getting bombed and whatnot, because all that played a role. I mean, the ultimate goal was the invasion. The ultimate goal was the shock and awe invasion. Bombing, that was the ultimate goal. The whole elevator thing, and then the white mob, the looting white mob, they was looting. They was doing a bunch of other stuff too that they not naming. All you got to do is read between the lines. That stuff right there, that was just collateral damage. Or actually, that was just a distraction, man. That was like planned. That was already written into the plan that was going to happen. That was going to be something that like happened because of other things. When the fight came, the whites knew where they were. Nothing was handier. The innocent could suffer alone. Meaning the people who didn't have no people. The people who didn't have a large family could suffer alone. Because these people wasn't standing at arms, prepared for something like this to happen. Now, why is something like this happening? And who are the men who have been organized to do this? How long were they planning this? Yeah, these weren't just so-called white men who just happen to get together. Because if they don't got shit, they also don't got no organizational skills. So this was organized. The innocent could suffer alone. The plunderers sallied forth into the segregated region, spread destruction, and made their way back to their homes in peace. They had nothing to fear. So they was doing home invasions. And our people lived in their homes. And they potentially was surrounded by acres. So these boys was doing these pasty sweating, lunch meat smelling settlers, old peoples, was doing home invasions and then going back home. What were the people to do? A white man had just been lynched, in the city in August. Did they have reason to believe that the life of a black man would be spared? A crowd of white ruffians gathered at the courthouse. Their counterparts in our race gathered, and that's the race with the capital R, gathered, and there were whispered conversations. The air was ominous. The small groups grew. Answering the threat of the white men at the courthouse, 40 of our men went down to see what was wrong. On the way, they were met and joined by more or less irresponsible elements. At the courthouse, the leaders got no satisfaction. Barney Cleaver, a police officer of the race, urged the men to go back. There is an argument. One of our men is killed. The fight is begun. There were 3 distinct battles in the race war besides the skirmishing. While the men argued at the courthouse, men and boys argued at the courthouse. While the men argued at the courthouse, men and boys in the outlying regions engaged in isolated cutting and shooting scrapes. The office of one of the race newspapers in the town is so amazing how they just will not call you what you is. They won't call you by the name that your people gave themselves. They refuse to recognize you as who you really are. So they call you in this the race newspapers, because without you, it would be no such thing as race. Because race is ultimately garbage anyway. But without you, it wouldn't exist at all. Because there wouldn't be enough participants. The office of one of the race newspapers in the town was made a gathering place for our men. Measures for defense were taken up. News had got to them of the advance of the whites from the center of town. The mob rushed into the district, shooting wildly in the main streets of the section. A temporary stand was made by our men, but on the advice of the saner, they retreated, went to their homes, and were quiet. The whites did not stop. Their first move was to summon the home guards. These guards planted machine guns on the hills overlooking the segregated district. At 4:30 in the morning, a steam whistle sounded 3 times. At 4:30 in the morning, a steam whistle sounded 3 times. This was the signal for the whites to begin the invasion of the race district. I didn't know they was going to use the word invasion. Indian War, one of the Indian Wars? Question mark. No, it couldn't be a war. Because the men, women, and children, they weren't standing at arms, knowing that a conflict was about to take place. It says at 4:30 in the morning, a steam whistle sounded 3 times. This was the signal for the whites to begin the invasion of the race district. They attacked the business places first. This is an invasion. They're not telling you who the whites are. Again, white pilots, whites in uniform, white soldiers, army rifles, sharpshooters. At 4:30 in the morning, it's 4:30 in the morning. Start beating at they door. Flash bangs. 4:30 in the morning. At 4:30 in the morning, a steam whistle sounded 3 times. This was the signal for the whites to begin the invasion of the race district. They attacked the business places first. The grocery stores, the general store, the auto body shop, the departments, the clothing store, the tailor, the salon, the barber shop. With the coming of daylight, airplanes from the local aviation field in which the Cadillac Company is interested directed the movement of the oncoming army. Who do you think was pointing army rifles? With the coming of daylight, airplanes from the local aviation field in which the Cadillac Company is interested directed the movement of the oncoming army, which the Cadillac Company. With the coming of daylight, we got to figure this out, y'all. Listen, we got to figure this out. Listen. Don't forget, race with the capital R is used synonymously to represent us, the Americans, the only Americans that ever was, is, and will be, the American Indians, the Americans. This was the signal, the steam engine, the steam whistle sounded 3 times. This was the signal for the whites to begin the invasion of the race district. They attacked the businesses first. The businesses. Providing for the community. With the coming of daylight, airplanes from the local aviation field. Remember that aviation field that they spoke of earlier in the previous article? The aviation field that only held a particular amount of planes, and it was made to seem like that they weren't the ones participating, or that if they did participate, it wasn't substantial. With the coming of daylight, airplanes from the local aviation field in which the Cadillac Company is interested. The Cadillac Company is interested in the aviation field, in the soil, the land that is carved out as the aviation field. The Cadillac Company is interested, directed in which the Cadillac Company is interested. Airplanes from the local aviation field directed the movement of the oncoming army. At 6:15 a.m., who's telling this story, man? I mean, 6:15 a.m., they got details of events. Like, the events are detailed and time stamped. Who taking the minutes? At 6:15 a.m., men in the planes began dropping fire bombs of turpentine and other inflammable material on the property. Women and children running from their burning homes. See, this is horrific. Now, understand, we don't know who the pilots were of the planes. We don't know. We don't know that. They said whites. That's it. That's it. That's all we know. See, this is the horrifying part. This is the disgusting, despicable part right here. And don't miss the propaganda aspect of it as well. Listen, it says women and children running from their burning homes into the streets were struck dead by the incessant machine gun fire from the hills. It says women and children, and it's a despicable, disgusting, demonic thing carried out by demonic people. However, they just told us that they were white. They're not telling us who it is. And they're not telling us if they were all white. But they're only saying women and children. So there were no men? Yeah, there were men. But this is to pull at your heartstrings. This is to make you mad. Well, I wish the person who wrote the article would understand that everything we've read everything we went over up until this point, just the idea that an invasion happened would be enough to make somebody mad. Telling us these despicable things just kind of make us want to come get you. Women and children running from their burning homes into the streets were struck dead by the incessant machine gun fire from the hills. Machine gun fire from the hills. Remember, they dropped off machine guns. Or burned to death by the liquid fire poured down from the airplanes. Liquid fire poured from the airplanes. A great concourse of people fled to the church to seek protection and prayer. The men carried their weapons with them. The whites stormed the church, the defenders putting up a game fight until the airplanes bombed the structure and all within were driven out to the mercy of the mob. On the railroad tracks were the mob of 5,000 yelling men and screaming women who fought a battle of hate and blood. White women caught fleeing women of the race and beat them with their shoes. Their clothes were torn from them. With frantic gestures on the part of their assailants, they were driven through the streets. White women caught fleeing women of the race and beat them with their shoes. So now enter the white women. We hadn't heard from them except the one on the elevator. The one on the quote elevator, end quote. Enter stage right, the white woman caught fleeing women of the race, you, and beat them with their shoes. I mean, that seems unlikely, but I mean, during all this terror, anything is possible. But white women beating sisters with shoes, oh my God. See, they just made it like kind of unbelievable. But anything is possible within the framework of this horror story. The battle on the tracks was the last stand made. Men fought with utter abandon against the human devils above and around them. Yes, that they have right. Forget white, forget black, forget Negro, forget the term the race. The battle on the tracks was the last stand made. Forget those things. Men fought with utter abandon against the what? The human devils above and around them. As the scorching white fire from airships above, was poured. poured upon them. The defenders of their homes made a valiant effort to stave off the bloodthirsty passion of the hound who killed them. Men slipped and fell in the blood of their brothers. White men died cursing niggers. Railroad property on the tracks was utterly demolished. One man, leaning far out from an airplane, was brought down by the bullet of a sharpshooter, and his body burst upon the ground. One man, leaning far out. White men died cursing niggers. Railroad property on the tracks was utterly demolished. One man, listen, one man leaning far out from an airplane. That, remember, the airplanes are pouring liquid fire out, or turpentine, or whatever they're using, pouring it out, torturing people, invading this soil, committing an act of war on an unsuspecting population. So I think. One man leaning far out from an airplane. Now, understand, I'm assuming the people in the airplanes are the people who they term as white, was brought down by the bullet of a sharpshooter. So I'm assuming that the sharpshooter was one of the American Indians defending himself, his family, his people, his community, his soil, and his body burst upon the ground. Men were hideous, women were evil. Judgment was in the air, and the multitude perished. While this battle was being fought, the Boy Scouts were tearing through the town, helping to set fire to homes which had been overlooked. Did you hear who I said was tearing through the town? Helping to set fire to homes? Did you hear that? The Boy Scouts. Not the Girl Scouts, not the one who be outside the grocery store selling cookies. Selling a variety of cookies and all that. Not them, not the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts. While this battle was being fought, while men were being hideous and their women were being evil, the Boy Scouts, which is their sons, were tearing through the town, helping to set fire to homes which had been overlooked. Gas would be turned on and lit, and furniture piled upon it. Listen, for the sake of this story, for the sake of this, okay? Again, at this point, it's very difficult for me to believe anything. It's not even about belief. We see what's in front of us. Let's deal with what's in front of us. Okay? Because it ain't about believing nothing. Because I don't believe anything. Gas will be turned on and lit, and furniture piled upon it. No effort was made by the authorities to arrest the incendiaries, the Boy Scouts. Their hellish work went on. It was systematic and it was complete. So we got the men and women, right? We got the men and women. It says men were hideous, women were evil. And then we have the Boy Scouts. These are boys in uniform. So listen, were the men and women also in uniform? Just asking. Just asking. Their hellish work went on. It was systematic and it was complete. The men who had hidden in their homes were driven out and killed. The women and children were left to starve or perish. In one day? They was left to starve or perish in one day? What are they talking about? They came back and visited them to see what had happened, what had become of their lives after 30 years. The women and children were left to starve or perish. What do you mean starve? What they weren't trying? What was they trying? What was they hungry? They was trying to eat during all of this stuff. This is all within the course of what they say is 18 hours. The men who had hidden in their homes were driven out and killed. The women and children were left to starve or perish. What are you talking about, starve? Perish, I understand, but starve? Where does that come in at? Here we go. Here we go. Troops were not necessary to stop the riot. It stopped itself. When the homes of the people had been burned, when liquid fire from airplanes had struck terror into a defenseless people, the force of the eruption was spent. They could fight no more. Then the looting began. The white thieves. I wish they would name where these white people come from. I wish they would name it. Why couldn't they be that honest? We know they pilgrims and settlers. We know that. Most of them anyway. Then the looting began. The white thieves went unmolested into the smoldering ruins and seized everything of value. The people of the race, the Americans, the American Indians, were picked up in automobiles, disarmed, and carried to the large halls, baseball park, and white churches. The massacre and destruction at Tulsa is probably the greatest in the history of America. Varying reports have been published in the newspapers concerning the number of deaths, and it says the massacre and destruction at Tulsa is probably the greatest in the history of America. And understand something. It was all initiated by someone. Someone did this. Someone started this. Someone had the idea of this. This was an idea to someone. This started out as a thought. Who thought this up? Who came up with this? Who? I'm not doing it. You do it. Who came up with this? Varying reports have been published in the newspapers concerning the number of deaths. The first stories told of scores being killed. Later dispatches had the number down to 30. The first reports were doubtless correct. O.T. Johnson, head of the Salvation Army in this city, declares that the reports are too low. His lowest estimate is 150. That would include only members of our race. Soldiers guarding prisoners in the ballpark told them that 3 times as many whites were being killed as of our men. Think about this. Read between the lines. The first reports were doubtless correct. O.T. Johnson, head of the Salvation Army in this city, declares that the reports are too low. His lowest estimate is 150. That would include only members. It says his lowest estimate is 150. That would include Only members of our race. So O.T. Johnson is an American or American Indian, and he's the head of the Salvation Army in this city. Soldiers guarding prisoners in the ballpark told them that 3 times as many whites were being killed as of our race, of our men. Soldiers guarding prisoners. Soldiers guarding prisoners in the ballpark told them that 3 times as many whites were being killed as of our men. So the soldiers was Americans. And they said 3 times as many whites were being killed as of our men. So it wasn't the hand to hand that was the problem. It was the planes. Mr. Johnson states that on Wednesday, 47 men were pressed into service. Now, mind you, they're saying more of the 500, the 1,000, the 5,000 whites, more of them, 3 times as many whites were being killed as Americans. Mr. Johnson states that on Wednesday, 47 men were pressed into service as grave diggers, that these men worked all day Wednesday and Thursday digging over 100 graves, in each of which a man was buried. Friday and Saturday, 20 of the men were retained to continue the work. The bodies were not put into coffins, but thrown, charred as they were, into the graves. A rumor was spread that 2 truckloads of men were thrown into the Arkansas River. The closest guess to the number of dead is doubtless 300. The property loss is reported to be near $2 million. The burned area runs east about 7 blocks, north about 7 blocks, and then west to Cincinnati. This compromised the business and residential districts. Greenwood Avenue, the business district, was entirely wiped out. 4 blocks on Archer Street were destroyed. The First Baptist Church on North Elgin Street was burned to the ground. It was valued at $80,000. The entirely new Second Baptist Church was likewise destroyed. The hotel Stratford, with 68 rooms, entirely modern and recently built, was left in ashes. The hotel belonged to Mr. and Mrs. J.B. Stratford and was valued at $75,000. Other property to the extent of $25,000 belonging to Mr. Stratford was also demolished. The Tulsa Star, owned by A.J. Smitherman, and the Oklahoma Sun, owned by J.A. Balkman, have gone down in the ruins. Williams Confectionery Store and Elliott and Hooper's $100,000 department store went with the rest. The Red Wing Hotel, with 52 rooms and run by J.T. Presley, suffered the same fate as the others. Prominent among those killed was Dr. A.C. Jackson. The mob of Boy Scouts and Guardsmen surged about his house and fired through the windows. Then they began throwing firebrands at it and sought to enter it from the rear. Dr. Jackson came out on the porch and held his hands up, hoping thereby to have the mob go away without molesting his wife. He was shot in the stomach and breast, and the soldiers ran. And the soldiers ran. And the soldiers ran. Okay? I'm not making these words up. We have our answer. We got our answer. See what happened when you go through these articles? When you peel back the layers, this is what happens. See what happens when you read the actual words that somebody writing and not just reading and making your own words up as you go. Just like when you talking to somebody and it's the burden is on you to listen to the words that's coming out that person's mouth and not make up shit. He was shot in the stomach. The doctor, Dr. Jackson. Okay? Dr. Jackson. Ain't no Anglo-Saxon came over here. Ain't no pilgrim, no settler, no old peoples came over here and gave that brother his name, Jackson. At the hospital, it say Dr. Jackson came out on the porch and held his hands up, hoping thereby to have the mob go away without molesting his wife. He was shot in the stomach and breast, and the soldiers. Prominent among those killed was Dr. A.C. Jackson. The mob of Boy Scouts and guardsmen, remember the white mob? Huh? Remember the white mob that supposedly just got together, a bunch of like-minded white people supposedly got together on one accord? $4:00 in the morning, the steam whistle 3 times. The mob of prominent among those killed was Dr. A.C. Jackson. The mob of Boy Scouts and guardsmen surged about his house. Dr. Jackson came out on the porch and held his hands up, hoping thereby to have the mob go away. This is the same mob that we've been talking about from the beginning. Have the mob go away without molesting his wife. Regular schmegler degler people living life. And look what they got to go through. He was shot in the stomach and breast, and the soldiers ran. At the hospital, he was shot in the stomach and breast. And who ran? The soldiers ran. At the hospital where he was carried, a white physician recognized him, but it was too late to do any good. The number of persons wounded in the fights is beyond a reasonable guess. There were probably not less than 1,000. Many who received slight wounds fled to owner towns. Still others concealed their wounds for fear the authorities would arrest them as agitators. One of the most important after effects of the riot was the issuance of an order by Tulsa real estate men to the effect that the people whose homes had been burned must sell their lands to the whites to be used for industrial purposes. One of the most important after effects of the riot was the issuance of an order by Tulsa real estate men to the effect that the people whose homes had been burned must sell their lands to the whites to be used for industrial purposes. It was further stipulated that any other houses put up for them be in a further segregated district about 4 miles from the town. This action of the Tulsa Real Estate Exchange after the riot has caused many to think that there must have been some connection between some of its members and the systematic burning of the property of race citizens, of American Indians. widespread criticism of the police force and the soldiers. Widespread criticism of the police force and the soldiers was brought out after the riot. These men were the most flagrant in the violation of the law. Not only did they permit the mob to have free sway, but they joined it and used the authority of their office to scatter death and fear among the defenders. Not only did they permit the mob to have free sway, but they joined it. The police force and the soldiers joined the mob and used the authority of their office to scatter death and fear among the defenders. Guns were taken from these men and given to the whites to slay them with. Women of the race, or properly American women, American Indian women, sisters, were kicked and thrown into the streets by them when they sought to save some of their belongings. Do the right thing.